Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor and for today's video I'm going to be doing the rapid fire book tag. I don't really have much of an introduction for this video. I will be leaving all of the questions down below, so if you do this video, let me know in the comments down below. I would love to watch your video. Looking over these questions, I feel like I might have some unpopular opinions, so it's time to roast myself. Let's just get into the questions. So the first question is ebook or physical book? Physical books all the way. I have such a hard time reading ebooks. I really wish I didn't because it would make reading a whole lot easier and a whole lot more accessible for me, but it's something about the screen. I can't focus on it, and I've tried it in light mode, I've tried it in dark mode, I've tried it any number of ways, but even when I have my iPad, I just can't focus in the same way that I can when I'm reading a physical book. The next question, paperback or hardback? Hardbacks all the way. I think they last longer. I think a lot of the times the hardback cover designs just look better. I think they look nicer on the shelf, and I also prefer reading them in hardback as well. The next question is online or in-store shopping, and especially right now, definitely online. However, I do buy probably about 90% of my books secondhand, so I do tend to go to secondhand bookstores and pick them up physically because I am very picky about the condition that I like my books in, even if they are secondhand. And I'm gonna be honest, in-store book shopping is one of the things that I'm missing most in self-isolation, so I'm going to have to say in-store book shopping, even though online shopping is very convenient and sometimes, yeah, a little too convenient. The next question is trilogies or series, and for this one I wasn't really sure what I was going to go with, but then I realized that out of my favorite series of all time, 2 out of 3 of them are trilogies. So I think I am going to have to go with a trilogy. I do love a big book series, but it tends to be that I think trilogies do tend to have the best pacing. I love them both, but just based on personal experience, you really can't beat a trilogy. And I would have to say, in terms of movies, that also tends to be the case. Once you get more than 3 movies in a series, it tends to drag, and unless you're like a super stan of that book series, movie series, whatever it is, I feel like unless you're a big stan, after 3 it tends to drag and tends to kind of lose some of that magic of the series. The next question is heroes or villains, and we're gonna have to go straight in the middle and go anti-hero. Love morally gray characters. So I guess if I'm strictly following the rules of this tag, I'm gonna go with villains. The next question is a book that you want everyone to read, and I would probably have to say The Golden Compass in the His Dark Material series, or Northern Lights if you are anywhere else other than the US. I believe everywhere else it's called Northern Lights, but this is my all-time favorite series, and I think that it deserves a lot of hype. I know a lot of people are looking for a new fantasy series to really get behind, especially in the middle grade YA sort of genres, so that's a really great one. I think it's absolutely wonderful. It's my all-time favorite book, and it was published a while ago, so I think it kind of tends to go by the wayside, but HBO just came out with a wonderful series about it that definitely holds up, so definitely go read The Golden Compass, go read the rest of that trilogy, and then watch the HBO series and thank me later. It's just such a wonderful world. The next question or prompt is recommend an underrated book, and for that one I'm going to have to go with The Shining Girls by Lauren Bucas. Pretty much anything by this author though, I absolutely love her. And in particular, this book is my favorite, but you also can't go wrong with Broken Monsters. This is a murder mystery thriller that has to do with time loops and time travel. It's such a wonderful blend of a thriller and a little bit of fantasy elements, magical realism, and it's so well written too. I absolutely love this book. And I am actually going to read a little bit of the synopsis just so you can get a better taste for this because it's absolutely wonderful. So Harper Curtis is a killer who stepped out of the past. Kirby Maserati is the girl who was never meant to have a future. Kirby is the last shining girl, one of the bright young women burning with potential, whose lives Harper is destined to snuff out after he stumbles on a house in Depression-era Chicago that opens onto other times. At the urging of the house, Harper inserts himself into the lives of the Shining Girls, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. He's the ultimate hunter, vanishing into another time after each murder, untraceable until one of his victims survives. Determined to bring her would-be killer to justice, Kirby joins the Chicago Sun-Times to work with the ex-homicide reporter Dan Velasquez, who covered her case. Soon Kirby finds herself closing in on the impossible truth. It's really good. you should pick it up. I absolutely love it. I think Lauren Bucas in particular, I don't think she's slept on in terms of like the world at large, but I definitely don't see her being talked about ever on Booktube, so I would highly recommend giving this author a try. The next prompt is the last book that you finished, and for me, that would be Girl, Serpent, Thorn. This was absolutely wonderful. I was not expecting to love this one as much as I did. I'd say my biggest complaint was that I wish it would have been a series. I do believe at the current moment it's just a fantasy standalone, but this is a YA fantasy that is inspired by Persian mythology and Persian epic tales. There is a sapphic love triangle in here, morally gray characters. The main character is bisexual. This is just really great, and my only complaint was that it wasn't longer. This was the last book that I finished, and I'm so happy to say that I did really love this one. The next prompt is the last book you bought, and for that one, I went to buy my siblings something for their birthday. Both of my sisters' birthdays are coming up, and then I ended up buying something for me as well, so whoops. But that is going to be Teen Titans Raven by Kenny Garcia, illustrated by Gabriel Piccolo, and I absolutely love this. I read it last year. This is the start of a Teen Titans comic reboot. I absolutely love the art style, love the story. It's like grayscale with splashes of purple inside, which is really cool. And for me, Raven was like the blueprint for everything. Teen Titans was like my first superhero show that I watched. Raven was just absolutely the best character in my opinion. She's still one of my favorite superheroes, probably my favorite DC superhero, if I'm being honest, and this was just really delightful to read. And it's definitely a new spin on the character too, so even if you really know a ton about Teen Titans, know a ton about Raven, I think this really takes the lore in different places, and it's also set in New Orleans, which is an added bonus. It's just a really wonderful graphic novel. I know spooky season's coming up, and this would be a really good one to reach for because it has those touches of spooky elements because Raven's powers tend to be a little bit darker, and also it is set in New Orleans, so you get that extra atmosphere in there while not being too spooky because it is a superhero graphic novel. The next question is, what is the weirdest thing you've ever used as a bookmark? And I don't use weird things as a bookmark, but I am going to be honest and say probably 8 times out of 10 I don't use bookmarks at all. I just remember the page number and go off of there, and if I don't remember the page number, I just kind of flip around in the book until I find it. That's a little bit of chaotic energy for you, but yeah, I either use a designated bookmark that was purchased as a bookmark, or I just don't use one at all. I don't use anything else. The next prompt is use books, yes or no? Yes, absolutely yes. I would not own most of the books in my possession had it not been for used books. I think they're absolutely wonderful. You can find really wonderful editions that way, really wonderful books that way, and save a good deal of money as well. Top 3 favorite genres for me, really easy. That's horror and fantasy for the first 2, and for the third one, it's probably a toss-up between sci-fi. I don't read a lot of sci-fi, but the books that I tend to read in sci-fi I usually love. I'm just very picky about it. Or nonfiction when it comes to like a very niche micro history. And that's pretty much, I would say, about 95% of my reading. I have been tracking the genres that I've been reading this year, and it is horror, fantasy, nonfiction, some sci-fi sprinkled in there, and then very regularly we get like some contemporary in there as well. So the next question is borrow or buy, and if we're talking about purely physical books, I'm going to have to say buy, because I just don't use my physical library too much. My library system does have a lot of branches, but they are all a good distance away from me. It's not an impossible distance, but it is something that like you have to plan to put the library in that day. You can't spontaneously go, so it is a distance away. However, I do use Libby a ton. So if we're talking about audiobooks, I do rent audiobooks from the library all the time. However, I don't normally use physical library books, and especially since my library has been closed since last year, the branch that is closest to me, the only one I can really go to, has been closed for renovations since December of last year, and then obviously with COVID it hasn't reopened back up, or I think it just did this past week, but I'm feeling that it's going to be closing soon. So yeah, if it just comes to physical books, buy over borrow. The next question is character or plot, and for that one I'm gonna have to go with character all the way. My books don't even need to have a plot, honestly. If it's good characterization and good atmosphere, I'm still gonna like the story, which take it as you will. Obviously a plot is nice, but I definitely prefer character driven books over plot driven books, and I would rather have a book with kind of a shoddy plot and beautiful character character work than a book that has a wonderful plot and poorly written characters. I mean, one of my favorite books is It back there, and probably about 70% of that book is character work rather than plot, so that really describes my reading tastes as a whole. Next question is long or short books, and that is long. I like big books, I cannot lie. I'm so sorry for that dad joke, but it has to be said. I love a lengthy page count. Again, like I just mentioned, It is wonderful. I loved Imaginary Friend by Stephen Chbosky last year. I thought it was the perfect length. I have never once read a book and said, hey, this should have been shorter and I would have enjoyed it more, but I have read a ton of books where I wanted them to be longer. The next prompt is long or short chapters, and I'm gonna have to go with long chapters. They make me feel more accomplished, and I just feel like sometimes short chapters, I'll read a couple chapters and be like, this should have all been one chapter. I feel like books with longer chapters tend to have a better flow to them. I feel like that's a very unpopular opinion. Long chapters over short chapters, all the way for me. The next prompt is the first 3 books that you can think of. For that one, it's sitting right behind me. It, Mexican Gothic, because I'm really looking forward to that one, and Priory of the Orange Tree, because that's my all-time favorite fantasy book at the moment. The next question is books that can make you laugh or cry. So for laugh, I'm trying to think of like a book that made me laugh. I know generally I don't think I really laugh out loud during books. I'd say probably comics would do that for me more than books. I'm trying to think. The Deadpool and Spider-Man, that new series, like the newest iteration of that, is really funny, and I feel like I definitely have laughed out loud at that one, so I'll have to say that one. And for books that make me cry, that's an easier emotion to get out of me. I've definitely cried at It before. The Amber Spyglass by Philip Pullman, that's the last book in the His Dark Materials trilogy, that made me cry. Dragon Republic got me real close, so I have a feeling that The Burning God is going to make me cry. And Lock and Key, the last issue of that by Joe Hill, that got me teary as well. The next prompt is our world or a fictional world, and 2020 especially, this is a no-brainer. Fictional world all the way. I would greatly love to be in the His Dark Materials world and have a demon, but honestly, anything, any fantasy world. I'm trying to think, pretty much any fantasy world that I've read this past year. I mean, I'm trying to think. I can't really think off the top of my head a single fantasy world that I wouldn't prefer over this world, especially this year at the moment. So thank goodness for reading, I guess, on that one. The next prompt is audiobooks, yes or no, and yes, I love audiobooks. I'm a fan of audiobooks. Audiobooks are reading. I especially love like the full cast audiobooks. I wish full cast audiobooks were more normalized because those are absolutely wonderful. But I do really enjoy reading audiobooks. I'd say maybe 30 to 40% of my total reading is audiobooks, and just depending on the month, sometimes like all of my reading is done via audiobook, and sometimes it's like a 50-50 split. Next question, do you ever judge a book by its cover? Yes. I feel like if you don't say yes, you're lying. There's a reason why it is a popular phrase. Now, I will still pick up a book if I'm interested in it and I don't like the cover, but the synopsis is interesting. But just in terms of books that I do read and my physical TBR and the books that I prioritize, you know, if I'm in between 2 books, I'm definitely gonna go with the one with the better cover. I know that probably makes me super vain, but that's just where I'm at with that. The next question is, do you prefer book to movie adaptations or book to TV series adaptations? And for that one, I'm going to go with TV series all the way. Let's just make every single book that is over 300 pages a TV series. Even books that are less than that. I can think of so many off the top of my head. As a rule, I think books are always better than their movie counterparts. There are some exceptions, but I think that TV series definitely, they come up equal. I feel like almost all of my favorite adaptations are series rather than movies. And that leads me to the next prompt, which is a movie or a TV show that you love more than the book. And for that one, for me, is so easy. That's The Haunting of Hill House. I don't like the book. It doesn't work for me. Other Shirley Jackson does, but I'm not a fan of that book. But Haunting of Hill House, the TV show, on the other hand, I consider it one of my favorite movies of all time. I love it. I love everything about it. And that's probably not the best example because those two are very, very different. They share the same name, but other than that, like the plots and pretty much all the characters and everything else are very different. But I love The Haunting of Hill House TV show. Whenever people ask me about my favorite movies, I always include that one now because it's just one of my favorite pieces of film. And then the last question is series or standalones, and for that one I'm gonna have to go with series. I mean, I'm a fantasy book lover and I love sprawling fantasy series. Obviously with horror, most of them are standalones and I'm fine with that, but especially for fantasies, I think series are a lot better than standalones. I think you can explain and delve into a world more without being info dumpy and really just explore a whole new world that's not your own. So that is actually going to bring us to the end of this tag. If you liked this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, and subscribe to my channel for more content from me. I will catch y'all in my next video. Bye!